Constance, among all the roles you played in Black Panther, Ben and Ara, Scorpion, The German King, Monk, Eagle Heart, Southland, and Yemi's Dilemma, which one describes better the cause of your life and why?
Wow, that's a really interesting question. It's interesting because for the most part, working as an actor in this town, you don't really get a choice. You don't get your pick of whatever it is you need to play, especially if you are at a level where you are coming up in your career. And once you've been established, then you can start creating roles for yourself and, collaborating with people that you really, really admire. But my career so far, I think, has been interesting in the sense that I've been, when Black Panther happened, then I started getting shooed into this, African warrior queen archetype, which I think is interesting. And it's not a bad archetype to be slotted into, because I think we need more imagery of Black women being strong, but not being perceived of as angry or being angry for no reason. I think that's always been a problematic idea of what Black women are, especially in America. So the warrior queen archetype, I think, is one that's really interesting and really cool, but not necessarily something that I intended. Ben and Ara is a film that is pretty close to my heart because I participated in the creation process of that. It was written by a good friend of mine. We collaborated on the story. We produced it together and we starred in it together. It's also a film that is very philosophical and speaks to religion, and it's very intellectual. And I think these are the things that are reflective of who I am as a person. I like talking about religion. I'm interested in different philosophies, and I like having conversations with people about these topics. So I would say that's the one film that's closest to my heart.
The role you played in Black Panther got you an award. It was not like the role you played in the Ben and Ara. It was a short, but it got an award. How would you explain this recognition?
The recognition for Black Panther, first of all, I was a stunt performer in Black Panther. I played one of the Dora Milaje, so I wasn't like one of the big stars. I think one of the biggest blessings for me in terms of participating in that film was that I really just wanted the opportunity to work with Ryan Coogler. I'm a huge fan of his, and I've been following his career since the beginning. And so the chance to work on Black Panther was just such a big deal to me. And I was just happy to be in his presence.
To be there.
So that was great. Now, Black Panther, the award that I won was an ensemble award. There were over 200, between 200 to 300 stunt performers who participated in that film. And the award I received was for stunt performing. And I shared that award with hundreds of other people, which is amazing. Wow. But the beauty of that is the crew of stunt performers was mostly Black. And I kind of joke to myself, like, all the Black stunt performers in Hollywood ended up being in Black Panther. It just tells you how small that community is. What an opportunity for Black Panther to highlight them and really get their names and their faces out there and their talents out there. I think for a lot of stunt performers, they are the people who are working behind the scenes to make the actors look good. So if you're jumping off of buildings, you're driving fast cars, you're doing, these cool martial arts moves, 9 times out of 10, it's a stunt performer whose face you never see. But their job is to make the person whose face does get seen look really good and capable. So I feel sometimes like I, snuck in the back door, this aspect of creativity that I wasn't supposed to. And I feel a bit like an imposter, but it's been one of the greatest pleasures of my life to have been able to work on that particular skill. I mean, I've never done martial arts before. I've never done stunt choreography or fight choreography.
But you were trained for that.
I was trained for a couple of weeks. And by the end of it, I was in so much pain. Muscles I didn't know I had been activated, but it was just one of the best experiences of my life, truly.
And those techniques stay, or you lose them after?
You keep them if you keep practicing, but after 2 years, no, of course.
You forgot about them.
Yeah. Unless I do another gig where I have to do something like that, then I'll go into training.
Constance, how do you marry politics to cinema?
How does one marry politics to cinema?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the most straightforward way is by making films about politics. There's been tons of political films. You know, I have yet to do one, but I have consumed a lot of political films. I think documentaries are also a really good avenue for educating people about politics, promoting political ideas. You know, I've learned a lot from watching different types of documentaries about politics, not just American politics, but global politics, economics. I think the danger comes in, though, when we as individuals and as people who consume this content don't look at it critically. I think it can be very dangerous when, you know, we are putting these stories out there to an audience and really not being careful about telling the truth, about presenting the information in a way that is unbiased. And so people are very susceptible to getting information and just assuming that everything we're getting from this square tube that we call a television or our computer screens or our phone screens is fact. And it's not always that way. And I think the responsibility really lays with both parties, the people who are creating this content and putting it out there and the people who are consuming this content. All have a responsibility to think critically and really assess. And also looking at it as this is just one tool among many. You know, for some people, this is the first access point. But once you watch that political film, which, by the way, some of it is going to be fictional, just to create dramatic tension for the purpose of that story, however it is being told, the responsibility then lays on the hands of the consumer to, if they have more curiosity about that particular topic, they do more research, they consult books, they consult websites and magazines and just, you know, educational institutions that provide more information about that aspect of politics. I mean, politics is something that has been part of human civilization for a very long time. So we have lots of information. And I think, you know, in this day and age, we're living in an information age and everybody has access to information. It's just a matter of seeking it out. So as somebody who's involved in the storytelling world and the filmmaking world, we definitely have the means of educating people via cinema, but I think it doesn't end there.
Your one-woman show titled Ghost Town talks about the Anglophone crisis in Cameroon, the country of your birth, that you left as a teen. What's your reading about this crisis today?
Well, the crisis had died down. By all appearances, it has died down. But again, I mean, let me backtrack a little bit. The reason why I wrote Ghost Town was because I did not understand what the crisis was about. And so I made it a point to say, okay, I'm seeing all this information coming out of the internet, on Facebook, on Twitter. Occasionally a mainstream news outlet would write something about it, but it wasn't being covered as much as you would expect, you know, from any kind of political crisis that was happening anywhere around the world. And so for me, I left Cameroon when I was 10 years old. I've grown up in the United States. I've lived in the West most of my life. However, I grew up in a pretty close-knit family, and a family that really kept in touch with our Cameroonian culture, our African culture. When the crisis started happening a few years ago, I just became very, very curious, very disturbed, very saddened. And it became very easy for me to want to step back and say, I don't know what this is. I'm just one person. There's nothing I can do to influence change. And as more and more things kept happening, as more and more information kept coming out, the internet was shut down in Cameroon for some time, which is just incredible. I decided, wait a minute, I don't understand what this is. And I want to take the opportunity to educate myself. I want to learn. I want to study Cameroonian history. I want to learn everything that brought us to this point. And that's how Ghost Town came about. From reading all kinds of news articles, from looking at Cameroonian history. And my goal in the way that I structured this one-woman play was to look at the three different sides that were in conversation with each other. One was the government. One were the rebels, the Anglophone rebels. And then the other group of people that I wanted to represent were the victims of this crisis. the average person, the grandmother, the young man who, you know, his school is shut down as a result of this, the entrepreneur who can no longer pursue his business because, you know, every Monday he can't go out and work, the traveler who is at risk of getting kidnapped, you know, while trying to get from one town to another because these rebels have accosted them. So many people have died. You know, there's a lot of refugees that ended up in Nigeria because they couldn't stay in the villages where they were living. So, you know, as an artist, a lot of the times I feel as though I don't have any influence, I don't have any power, but I also recognize that my gift is to tell stories. And the best way for me to educate myself and share what I've learned with others and bring this message to my environment, because there were many people here in Los Angeles who had no idea that this was happening and who came and see the show and said, oh my gosh, thank you so much for doing this. You know, that's the power I have. And that was the contribution I decided I could make towards making people aware of this issue. That was the cause I had made. Now, where do I stand as far as this crisis go? For me, I want there to be an understanding for both sides to come together and really have a deep dialogue. Because one of the discoveries that I had made in my research is that this is not the first time a crisis of this nature has occurred in Cameroon. And this is not the first time it has happened for this particular reason. You know, it happened in the 90s, it happened in the 80s, it happened at independence. So it's something that flares up every generation. And as that continues to happen, the question then becomes, why has the government not made more strides to really sit down with Anglophone Cameroon and talk through their pain points and really properly address them? Until that happens, this will never go away. And as I'm discovering it in my generation, future generations will, you know, something will happen then, and the crisis will rise up again. So, you know, this is one of the things about politics that's really, really frustrating, this lack of will that people in power have to make lasting change. That's something that I find really puzzling.
Award-winning actress Constance Ejuma is an American actress of Cameroonian descent. She is known for her work in films like Black Panther, Ben and Horror, as well as television shows like Proof and Monk. Let's hear from her. Constance, what do you know about politics?
I know as much as everyone else who watches television and CNN and, you know, all the news shows about politics. It's become quite a hot topic in the United States, I guess, over the past 10 years because of all of the activity, all of the instability, all of the debating, all of the protesting. And, you know, it's something that's become really, really personal to a lot of people, given the leadership that we have and a great deal of discontent about that. I think the one beneficial thing that has come about as a result of it is many more citizens being interested in the political process and really making strides to become involved, to start running for office, to be the change that they want to see. I think that's very exciting, but I think we all have a lot of work to do, and we all have a responsibility to participate in the process.
You work as actress, producer, and writer, and you're given the opportunity to collaborate with the great people and great names such as Wole Soyinka, Shorer Agdaf Shlo. I don't know if I pronounced the name correctly, but the last big one just left the world. You met Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther, on the set of the movie Black Panther anyway, where you played the role as Dora Milaje warrior. I don't know. That's how you call it?
Yes. Dora Milaje.
Okay. Who is the Chadwick Boseman you knew, and how do you remember him?
I never met him. I never had the opportunity to meet him personally. I mean, I saw him on set one day at a distance. So we never really had a personal interaction. The Chadwick Boseman I knew was the Chadwick Boseman from the films that he made, including Black Panther. And I think the thing that is the most painful about losing him so early in his life is because, you know, there was this feeling that there was so much more that he intended to do. There was so much more that he would share with us, his gifts, you know, his visions and his hopes for the future. He was clearly somebody who was very conscious about the choices he was making as far as the stories that he was telling, and somebody who had a consciousness about the Black image and about how he wanted to portray Black characters on screen. I think all of that was something that people were very inspired by, and that's the gift that he left us.
What is the story in your movie Ben and Ara?
So Ben and Ara is about a Muslim American woman who falls in love with a Caucasian PhD student who also happens to be agnostic, which means he doesn't believe in any kind of faith or spiritual practice or religion. And so we're both philosophy students getting our PhDs in philosophy school, and we happen to encounter each other, strike up a conversation, fall in love, and that's basically where the story goes. And then eventually our relationship kind of breaks up because we can't overcome the differences in our lifestyles, in our philosophies, in, you know, the things that we choose to pursue for our futures. So that's essentially what Ben and Ara is.
So Constance, what's your course in life and in your career today? The purpose?
Well, I think my cause is to do as much as I can to inspire people to see their potential, to reach their highest potential, to live up to that, and to really understand that we all have the power to change things, even if it's a very small thing in our environment, to a very big thing like working on the world stage and having access to millions and millions of people who, you know, are looking to you for encouragement and inspiration. So for me, it's always about like, what is the best of myself and how can I use that to help others recognize the best of themselves? Now, as far as like a different type of cause that is of very, very deep interest to me is, you know, in light of the police brutality, the racism that's occurring not just in the United States, but around the world. One thing that I am very passionate about is creating a bridge, a much stronger bridge between Africans, African Americans, and, you know, people of the African diaspora at large. I was born in Africa. My family is African, but I grew up in the United States. And so in many ways, I'm in the middle. I'm not quite an African American, but I'm not quite an African either, because I just didn't grow up on the continent.
Right.
And I think the older I get, the more mature I become, the more educated I become, the more passionate I am about really bridging the gap that I feel exists between these two communities. And, you know, it's really sad for me when I hear Africans speaking negatively about African Americans, and then I hear African Americans speaking negatively about Africans, and there's so much lack of understanding, so much prejudice, and I think things have gotten better, especially in the past few years with things like Black Panther coming out and the Black consciousness kind of evolving in a certain way, but I think there's still so much work to be done there, and I'm just very passionate about bridging this gap, bringing togetherness, you know, cultivating a better understanding of each group, and really, really living this notion that we are cousins. We belong to each other. We come from each other. We must love each other. We must learn how to love each other better. We just have to do better. I mean, are you writing
a film or a movie about that?
Not right now, but I think there are a lot of projects being worked on that speak to that theme. I'll tell you a story about Black Panther. When we were working on that film, I came in as a stunt performer. I did not have access to the script. So I didn't know what the script was. I didn't know what the story was. And the first time I saw a screening of the film, I sat down in my seat about 10 minutes after the credits ran because I was so blown away by the heart of the story, the content of the story, the context of it, of how this conversation is transpiring between a child of Africa and a child of its diaspora, and the trauma that has been experienced by both parties. And I was really blown away because to me, it just indicated to me that whatever it is that I am aiming for, whatever it is that I'm building my brand to be, somehow the universe heard my desire and made it possible for me to be in this film, where I felt like it was really illustrative of the types of films I want to continue to do, films that are meaningful, films that touch people, films that make people think. So that's my cause. Those are my causes.
Interesting. So what's the beautiful thing you can tell the world today?
Never give up.